But this is what's called a jigger wheel. This is what I predominantly work on now. Ooh. There it is.
Very nice. Really nice.
You remember coming here when you were a little bitty guy?
Oh, yes. My mother told me that I told her when my sister, who's a year older than I am, when she went off to school, not to get me a babysitter. That's what my mother said. Now, I don't remember that, but she said, I told her, don't get me a babysitter. I'm not going to go. I'm going to go to work with you and Daddy. And we lived in a little house where the new road went right through our front door. It's about as big as this room. The 80s were great for business in that whole era there for a couple of decades with Miss Brown and how she pursued Appalachian crafts and things, and how she came the day she came to ByBee Pottery, and we were all in shock because she landed a helicopter in our yard. But you know, bus trips, kids, everywhere. It got to where they had to schedule. If they didn't schedule, and we got two people there at the same time, somebody couldn't go through at the same time, you know, because it wasn't a great big place. And my dad was insistent that everybody saw it all. I mean, we don't say, well, we're not going to take them by the kill, or we're not going to take them by his wheel. We're not going to do that. They're going to start from point A, and they end up at point A when they get back here. And that was such a big point to him, and kind of made him the man that he was, okay? But as far as the tourism, I mean, as you well know, we had people from all over the world. I mean, vice presidents' wives in ByBee Pottery, and lots of governors and that sort of thing. And, you know, when things are promoted, then that's what happens. People hear about it, people come. If they, you know, like if you build a field, they'll play. And that's kind of how it worked for us. Well, if it was your first time there, you usually got shoved in a corner, and they didn't get out of there till everything was gone. And that was the madness of it. When all that first started, people would bring their boxes in, and then they became weapons. I mean, pushing people out of the way, and they'd bring a carload full of kids and just tell them, go in and grab everything you can and put it in the box. Well, my mother finally figured out when we'd find pieces shoved back under the shelves, chipped. And my mother only wanted one thing her whole life, and that was her way. And she told us right then that no more boxes. So I remember the morning I went out there and everybody had their boxes, and I said, you can't bring them in. When you go to check out, I'll come get it, or you bring it in here. But the rule was, if you set it on the floor, and once you did that, it was yours. We're not debating. Now, they got to where they would set it on the floor, then they would trade amongst each other, which we didn't care. I mean, cash register made the same sound if they bought it or somebody else bought it. But it was really, I remember Joe B. Hall, I looked out, he's standing in line. And I said, Daddy, I said, we can't have UK's coach standing out there. He wasn't the coach at the time. So I snuck around the outside, and I got him. And he came in, and I said, I want you to watch this. And we opened the door. Mesmerized with it. In fact, he came to my dad's funeral, which I always appreciated. But he watched it, and of course his little wife was outside there. So my dad made some sort of deal with him. He said, you know, you all come back some other time and you tell us what you're interested in. I think we can accommodate you. Because then he always wanted Dad to go to a ball game with him. Very, very nice gentleman. But, and again, you know, the rules were made as the day goes on, really. My mother, I can hear when I opened the door, Mother would immediately start saying, it breaks, people. That was her favorite line, and most people listened to her, and she didn't want them running through there, not afraid they'd break pottery, afraid they'd fall on that old floor, you know, and get 100 splinters. But it was really exciting. But on the other side of that coin too, it was a rat race at times. It really was. I always tell people, you know, when you all leave, when all the people are gone, is when we really go to work, because we've got to set another kill, and we were setting 3 kills a week, 1,500 pieces on each kill. You know, there was 10 or 11 of us, and handling heavy kill plate. Nobody will know how much weight we lifted. Have no idea. The concept of clay, it being heavy anyway, and firing those kills and doing that sort of thing. Our day just started, you know, and we were always planning for the next kill, always. But it was still a good time. My mother did the bookkeeping. My brother was kind of Mom's assistant till the later years. He took it over, but he was more the clerk. You know, he took the orders. He would answer the phone and do stuff like that. And I was kind of the jack of all trades and master of none. I mean, if we needed to grind clay, if I needed to set the kiln, if I needed to help them glaze the kiln, if I needed to help them wrap the pottery, that's what I did. Now, what that did to me was take me away from what I really would have liked to have done, which would have been on the wheel all those years, to in some way mimic what my father did. Because I have not seen, and nothing against anybody else, but I've never seen anybody, and I've seen lots of potters, and most of them would tell me the same thing. It was just as natural as you and I sitting in these chairs. That's what he did. And we had his wheel. My brother-in-law was on the jigger wheel. We had 3 or 4 glazers. We had a guy in the casting room. But there was times on those busy mornings you're talking about, everything shut down because everybody had to come help us. You know, we've got to get them out of here so we can get back to work. Not that that wouldn't work, but you know, and if you don't, you know, if you don't accommodate people, they will come back. And my dad always told me, I don't want to make a piece of pottery that you won't use. It's like this pottery right here, these mugs and things. He said, eventually, Jim, they're going to drop it. They're going to break it. And what are they going to do? They're going to come back and see us. And he said, I don't want something that's just going to sit up on a shelf that you've paid $100 for. I can't remember anything. Maybe his bowl and pitcher sets, which I think he got $75 for. Maybe the wine decanter sets, which he got $75 for. I can't remember a piece. There may have been. He did make some large vases, but I don't think my dad ever priced a piece of pottery at $100. And those pieces were more for show than anything else. I mean, he would turn those vases that were that high, and people would sit there with their mouths. I mean, just the clay, and people don't realize the strength to center that piece of clay and keep it centered. It's way more than what anybody would ever know. And we spoke a while ago about the Pottery Festival, which I always enjoyed, and Harvey Connor enjoyed coming, and I saw him this week. You know, I always took an extra apron with me if I was there, or if I was over in Berea at the fair, because there's always one person in that crowd, and they go, well, that's not hard. And I would immediately turn the wheel off, grab that apron and say, well, come on up here. And of course the crowd's like, yeah, go on, show them what you... They'd be running that piece of clay and it'd be in their face and everything else. And I didn't do that for meanness, but just did it to, hey, you know, it's not what you think it is, not at all. That's just Dad. I remember when we were going to, especially when we first started, when I came home from Vietnam and I was going to the fair, he would send me to the fair with Harvey, and we'd go over there and we'd cut little pieces of cardboard this big, and every piece we made, we'd put on a piece of cardboard, and people paid 25 cents a piece for it. And it was not my dad's idea to charge them 25 cents a piece, but I told him, I said, Dad, you know, at the end of 3 or 4 days, this is a lot of clay, and you're paying 2 men to be here. I said, and you probably need to change, you know. And he said, well, maybe you're right. That's fine, but and maybe they appreciate it a little bit more unless you just hand it to them and walk off. But gosh, we made hundreds in a day, nonstop. Daddy, period.
Right.
Yeah, without question. Just the demeanor he had, and you know, if they wanted to talk basketball, pottery, his granddaughters, whatever it was, he was in. You know, and I've actually heard people, you know, very, very rare, but people who come in and almost have a slur on what he was doing, and my dad just didn't hear them. I'd be sitting there with my ears red as a beet, you know, thinking if I could get a hold of a piece of clay and clap it together, I know I could squirt it toward him, because you can do that. But anyway, and he absolutely ignored it, just ignored it and went on about his business, and may not even mention it. Of course I would, but he wouldn't. I have no idea. Hundreds, if not thousands. And that little bitty piece, that little picture that you're talking about that's behind me, you would think, well, there's nothing to that. It's actually more meticulous to carve that inside of that handle out that's solid, and to go through all these things. There's way more to it than what you think, but man, but what you got to understand is we could put those little pieces on the kill plates that are, you know, you 12 high, 7 stands back on 2 sides. You could put those where nothing else would go, and we'd just dot the whole kill with them. Yeah. So we at one time we always thought that just if we had a good run of the, I was going to say 126s, that's the stock number of it, the miniature pictures, that we probably could pay for the firing of the kill with those. Yeah. So always looking at those angles. Oh, me. Well, we've already mentioned Vice President's wife, Governor's wife, governors in my lifetime. I don't remember any, there was somebody pretty high up in the political scheme of things that came, but we would get lots of people. Daddy would talk about the old potters from North Carolina and those places. And my cousin was in North Carolina not too long ago and went into a pottery and mentioned the pottery. And the guy said, I know the family very well, my father or grandfather. And they would come see what each other was doing. And my dad was the kind of guy, and it's not that way so much now, but let's say we made our own colors. And that's the other thing I did. I made the glazes. I took that over from Harv after a while. If you wanted to find out what I'd put in that piece, you could have it analyzed. So, but if you asked me, or if you asked Daddy, he said, "What's cobalt blue?" He said, just base, you know, little frit here and do that. He didn't care. It wasn't like it was, you know, the ancient age, nothing like that. You know, it's just clay, it's pottery and stuff like that. But there have been many people, and you know, a lot of people Lori, don't understand what the name of ByBee comes from. I don't know do you understand where it came from?
I'm assuming the town is why.
Stagecoach stop.
Okay.
Was the stagecoach. That was the name of the family that lived there.
Oh, okay.
So it was ByBee Pottery, and my family lived in ByBee. Okay. And one time there was as many as 5 potteries in that area just because of the clay.
Okay.
Just because. Now, you tell me how they analyzed it back then? Have no idea.
And it started in 1809.
We use the date of 1809. There is some question if it wasn't there prior to that, or some segment of it. Okay, yeah. Bumstark family, was it Giddle? There were several potteries there, and you know, the clay's been it was tested. That's when my grandfather was alive. They said it's one of the purest veins of clay found in the world, and it's sedimentary. It was washed in during the Ice Age, and we dug it by hand. I mean, when I came home from the service, we were still digging it by hand. I said, Dad, time out. This is picking a shovel, and you might dig down 2 feet and hit a vein of clay, and you might dig down 15 feet and hit sand. So you never knew where you were going. And so I said, we need a backhoe. And so I learned to operate a backhoe, and I dug the clay from then on, which made it a lot nicer on all, because we would shut down for 2 weeks and go dig clay. And of course, if it rained overnight, the clay hole would fill up with water. You had to find a new hole, because it's, you know, you couldn't get down in there, couldn't get it out. In the later years, we got to where we'd stagger it. Okay, if we were going to Mom's, of course, if we ordered something from the store, which we did most of the time anyway, and even with that, I've said it right on the counter and told people to come on in. I mean, if you're not hungry and don't try to take my food, I'm good with it. Just, you know, whatever. Especially if they had orders to pick up, maybe they had somewhere they needed to be. Well, I understand that. It's a family-owned business, you know, and not just family-owned business. Businesses need to cater to who's paying the bills, you know. My mother always said, the customer's right. She said, it may take you a while to figure that out. They may have to be gone for a while, but she said, and we were very fortunate. I can only remember one real hostile person in the pottery, and that didn't last too long. Didn't work in ByBee. I think at one time maybe my grandfather was shipping some overseas, but we shipped a ton of pottery to Sawtucket, Long Island. My dad would make white canister jars, and they would put a print on it of a covered bridge. They were beautiful. They would buy the piece from us and sell that for probably 3 times more than what they gave for it. But their work was good. I mean, but it was just like a plastic tattoo that you put on or something like that. But it's gone. I mean, it's gone all over the world. There's no question about it. You know, when they had Miss Brown had Old Kentucky, and that up there, and that's a story within itself. That's when she landed the helicopter there, and we had just dug clay. And what you try to do is keep your clay clean. We just mowed the yard. They landed clay on grass on the clay, and I came out the door. I'm thinking, you know, and this lady steps off this helicopter first. A very elegant, tall lady, and she said, "Can Miss Brown come in?" And I said, "Miss Brown," and I looked. I said, "She can come wherever she wants to. Don't pay attention to that grass. It don't make any difference. We'll get it off of there." But she told my mom at the time. She said, "You know, we need to take this to New York. We need Bloomingdale's. This is where this needs to go." My mother didn't care. She looked at her and she said, "No, we're not looking for that. We're not looking for that. But thank you anyway." Well, pressures to be, and people call, and my dad said, "Yeah, wait a minute. You know, they're highlighting Kentucky, and we need to do this." So Mom said, "I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you one keel. Everything that comes off this keel is yours." And they said, "Do you have somebody that'll deliver it?" Of course, my brother jumped right through his skin. "I'll take it to New York." And so he takes a covered truck, and I mean, it's full. And he takes it up there and he goes to the opening. They sold out in about 20 minutes. She's calling my mother, and Mother said, "No, a deal's a deal." Because we had people from tourism and from everything that were coming to see us. And it was very disappointing to us for somebody to come in there on a kill day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and there'd be nothing but dust on the shelves. And we say, you know, we can only do this so much, and we're maxed out, totally maxed out. You know, you'd hope you wouldn't lose that business, but I could understand that. Well, of course, the old colors were salt glazes, so they all kind of had the same color to them, you know, or at least they do to me. It's like certain pieces of pottery, they all look the same to me. I mean, they may be a little bit different shape, but you can tell how they were taught and that sort of thing, and that's not derogatory against anybody's work. But old brown pieces are probably, not the salt glazes, the old brown pottery is probably that. And the yellow is hard because it was so close to the color of the clay. This is where we were washing the clay and getting all this stuff out, that it showed every little speck and things, and it just didn't do well. I will tell you that I've changed that within the last 2 years.
Wow.
I changed that. I redid the whole formula and finally got something that I was happy with. I didn't like white, and now it's pearl. It's very white, yellow. And see, one color makes it, you take your white and you add yellow to the white, okay? And then if you want the denim, you add some navy or ByBee blue, and it's, you know, if you'd gone back in the back room where I do the glazes, I had them written up on the ceiling with a magic marker as I was doing them. You know, 2 parts of blue and 1 part of this equals what? And there it was, you know, still back there. That was my records. You know, my dad used to make a hurricane lamp, okay? And it was like a jug that came up like this, and then it closed in, had a little lip, had a handle, and then Brenda would take, it was made whole. On the inside, the first thing Daddy'd do was put a little ring for a candle, and then Brenda, after it got so stiff, she would put it right up against these 2 pieces of wood that they had made, put it against there, and then run a wire straight down. And then you had the hurricane lamp where you hold it and the wind doesn't blow your candle out. I thought that was one of the more interesting pieces that we made. Yeah, I really liked that a lot. I'm going to tell you probably the most specialized piece that we've ever made is large pig banks. I'm telling you, I still get calls on them. And my mold is, because it's made to mold. People got to understand, if it's not round, it can't be made on the wheel. It's got to be made to mold. I mean, how do you make that pig this way? But those molds that I have right now are probably 40 years old, but they still make a pretty good pig bank. So that, you know, I mean, we made those for people and sent them everywhere. Family members, friends of family, and everything like that. I got a call the other day, and the woman told me, she said, listen, both my grandchildren have the big pig banks, and now I've got another grandchild. You can't tell me no, because I've got a smaller one now, and the features are real good on it. And she said, I'm sure it's beautiful. No. I said, well, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can arrange for you. Well, my cousin has a pottery called a Little Bit of ByBee in Louisville. He worked for us for 2 years, something like that, when we were in college. But he's gone on the decline, so I don't know exactly what he's doing. He told me he had orders to do for a little bit, so I'm not really sure. And like I told you before we started this, I'm just not real sure what direction I'm going to go in, if any, okay, if any. But it's very difficult for me, and it was difficult when we closed. I never closed. I still kept coming to the pottery. I was doing that when I was 11 years old, you know, my first check. And to shut me off from that, I had to come out and check on Mom and Dad anyway. You know, Dad had a stroke, and Mother was sick. And so I just started spending 4 hours. I'd make sure their breakfast, if it was my turn. My brother and sister helped immensely. But I would go over there, then I'd think, well, I'm going to come back at dinner time. I'm just going to go over here, unless I get a coroner's call or something like that, you know. But I would go over there and I just kind of kicked it back into gear, and all of a sudden I looked around and I thought, I need to burn this pottery. I need to fire it. So that's kind of how it started, you know. Just, you never know.